Thank you for joining us for Personal Experiences of African Americans in the Academy. Thank you all for joining us for our SICSS-Howard Mathematica Roundtable entitled Personal Experiences of African Americans in the Academy with Dr. Terri Adams, Dr. Britany Gatewood, Dr. Brandon Hogan, and Dr. Bahiyyah Muhammad. During these chats, we will get to know members of the faculty at Howard, one of our main co-sponsors for this event. I'll begin by introducing our panel, and then we'll jump into some questions. We'll conclude with questions from our audience. If you have questions in mind, please feel free to drop them in the chat box as we go. We'll also let you know when you can unmute and share them. So I'm going to begin by introducing one of our two faculty co-sponsors, Terri Adams. Terri Adams is a professor in the Department of Sociology and Criminology and interim director of the NOAA Cooperative Science Center for Atmospheric Sciences and Meteorology at Howard University. Next, I will introduce Dr. Britany Gatewood. Dr. Gatewood is currently a postdoctoral researcher at the Center for Educational Opportunity, Albany State University, and earned her PhD in sociology from the Department of Sociology and Criminology at Howard University. Next, we'll go on to Brandon Hogan. Brandon Hogan is an associate professor of philosophy at Howard University. And finally, Dr. Bahiyyah Muhammad, our second co-sponsor, faculty co-sponsor, is an associate professor of criminology in the Department of Sociology at Howard University in the District of Columbia. She's also an expert in incarceration. All right, so we're going to jump straight into questions. As I mentioned to all of you before we arrived in this space, these roundtables are meant to be real talk. While we are recording them, the chances are these will never end up being posted because we want to give people a chance to ask questions and be real about their experiences. So I'm going to start with a first question, and I'll throw it out to the group. Feel free to unmute and answer. So I think our audience would love to know what drew you to the Academy. So what was your path to the Academy?
I'll go first. So for me, it was actually observing one of my professors at college and thinking about what I thought his life was like and looking at the flexibility of time and the fact that you got to really dig into something that you were interested in. And it seemed like a path to have the ability to possibly affect policy and change, which was something that was really driving me when I was in undergraduate school. And so that's what drew me to the Academy.
Yeah, I think my path was somewhat similar. I saw what my professors were doing at Howard. I had a notion that they lived a pretty good life. I started off in law school and had a notion that I was going to be an attorney. I recognized soon that that wasn't going to be my path. And I recognized I looked at what I was doing with my days. Like I wasn't reading the law textbook, I was reading academic textbooks. So after a while, I just got real with myself and decided that what I was doing in my spare time, I should make my full time. So that's what drew me to the Academy.
For me, I was an undergraduate Ronald E. McNair scholar. And so learning from other scholars on the campus who had PhDs and were in academia and who were doing research was pretty intriguing. I liked the way they presented themselves in their presentations, but also in the things that they shared about their personal lives. And that was when I started to envision what a life would ultimately mean if I were to go and get a PhD, what that would mean for research.
How I got in was a little bit different. Kind of one of my lifelong questions ever since I was little was why people treated people differently just based on their identities. And so when I went to undergrad, like my first class, one of my professors like started answering this question. I was like, oh my God, I've always wanted to know this. And so I ended up being in a program, which is called Intergroup Relations, IGR, and I end up facilitating classes around social identity. So it'll be half Black or people of color, half white, and we'll talk about hot topic issues. Or it'll be gender, half people that identified as women, men, and I would facilitate, you have co-facilitators. So I did this in undergrad, and I'm like, I want to do this forever. I love this. I love, messing with people's minds a little bit. And I'm very into social movement. So, usually college students are where a lot of change happens in society. So I thought of, if I could do these things to these people and get them thinking differently, they could be the change in the world. I was pre-med, so that went left. I ended up doing sociology, but that's how I got interested in the academy.
So can you all share where you're from and where you did your undergraduate study, and talk a little bit about your current research? Who wants to go first?
No, I'll go. So I'm from Lakeland, Florida. I did my undergraduate research at Howard University. I was a political science major and philosophy minor. So I decided to make the full jump into philosophy after law school. So my research centers around theories of punishment, criminal justice, and just political philosophy generally. And I have some stuff on critical race theory too. So I think when I started my career, I was kind of free from the PhD program and decided I just wanted to just dive in everything I was interested in. But it's kind of solidified around those areas now: criminal justice, critical race theory, and just kind of political philosophy, philosophy of law generally.
I'll go next. So I started out at the University of Maryland, College Park. And at the time I was pre-law. Similar to Brandon, I realized that law school really wasn't for me. Hence why I ended up studying sociology at Howard University, where I returned as a faculty member. In terms of my areas of research, I look at how people respond to crisis events, particularly natural hazards and disasters. So something like COVID-19 is something that is right up my alley in terms of how we've been, as a society responding to it, as well as how individuals process risk and respond to risk. And I look at both the short and the long-term impacts of these things.
I was born in Far Rockaway, Queens, New York. We live next to the beach. My mother's family is from the Bahamas. And so we spent many of our days on the beach in New York, in Far Rockaway. And then we moved to New Jersey, where I was raised and attended school. My research area of expertise is the lived experiences among Black families in mass incarceration, specifically centering the experiences of children of incarcerated parents. When I conducted my dissertation and interviewed kids, I was just amazed by the ways in which the data got so much wrong. And so much of the work that I've been doing now is to kind of flip the script and to highlight the just beautiful nature of individuals and intellect that I was able to identify in the face-to-face interviews with children 7 through 18.
I am originally from Farmington Hills, Michigan, which is right outside Detroit. My undergrad was at University of Michigan. And my major was sociology, minor Latin American Caribbean studies. And then my master's was also in University of Detroit. And then I went to Howard for my PhD. That was the only place I applied to. I wanted to go to Howard for my PhD. Luckily, y'all accepted me. But my research centers Black women, and even my master's thesis, everything, because Black women are constantly left out of the literature. And I'm very interested in social movements and change. And my oldest brother, who's in prison, So I've gotten very interested in like the collateral consequences of incarceration, just because I experienced it. And so my dissertation ended, and my research is how Black incarcerated women resist racism and sexism. So when something happens while they're incarcerated, how do they react, right? What political practices do they have? Because just because they're inside doesn't mean they don't resist, doesn't mean there's not social movements. So highlighting, because most of the literature talks about white women or puts all women together, which we know the experiences are different. So what political practice of Black women and also of their children? And so kind of how do the Black mother and even incarcerated Black women influence their children's political practices?
So we have a question from a member of our event staff, Amanda.
Hi, am I pinned? Yes. Yeah, my name's Amanda. I'm here as event staff. Thank you all so much for being here. My question is, how do you think your identity has affected your experience in the Academy?
That's a good question. Really good question. I should start off by saying I didn't answer part of the first question, which is I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I think my identity influences everything I do, really. And I think it does for most of us. We're just not always conscious of it. And I think it informs what I do in terms of my passion for wanting to represent my race and my gender in spaces where I think we're absent, such as in the study of sociology of disaster. And it impacts the questions, research questions that I come up with, and the populations that I choose to focus on, as well as my passion for training underrepresented groups like African Americans and Latinx folks.
Yeah, it is a good question. It's kind of hard to parse out individual answers because, like Terri said, it's kind of permeates all that you do, especially being at a HBCU. So I think one, yeah, the population of students I chose to work with, like I thought about going different places, but at a certain point I recognized that Howard was the place I wanted to be because I felt like I could be my most true academic self at Howard and not be looked at differently. I think it impacts my research as well. So there's a few papers on the back burner that I want to do about traditional democratic theory and its interaction with critical race theory. So I taught a whole course on democratic theory. So I had them read Lonnie Guinier and Derek Bell, but I didn't see much literature where there was an interaction between what the white guys were doing and what was going on in critical race theory. So I also see myself as kind of being in a position to do something new just simply because of my identity. But I think when I show up in public outside of Howard University, have this strong desire to show up and represent and speak up and be a representative, especially if I'm the only Black person in the room. So I experienced that in grad school and when I go to conferences as well. So it could be a positive or a negative, but yeah, when I show up at a conference somewhere, I'm the only Black person, it's like, you're about to hear some Black intelligence today if you don't hear it any other day.
For me, I think it's affected me very because when I was in grad school, so I graduated last year, and went to conferences, people wouldn't pay attention to me, right? I look young, so I look like I'm like, 20, which I'm not. So people wouldn't talk to me, right? They would just walk past me, or they'll look directly at my name tag and saw Howard, and then they would be like, oh, and just keep walking. But in some spaces when I said, oh, I went to University of Michigan for my undergrad, then they paid attention to me, right? Even though I'm getting my whole PhD, it's like, oh, but your undergrad was at this school, right? This elite whatever school. And so, when I go into spaces, as Dr. Hogan was saying, I'm going to be unapologetic. And most of my backlash has actually been white women about my research. They have come at me with questions that make no sense, but sometimes you have to do like the academic clap back real quick. And there'll be find holes in my arguments, which don't even exist, but are just like, they need to kind of show out that they're more intelligent, I guess, and that they thought of this more. And so, especially as sociologists, you know, we look at groups, I look at interactions, so I'm seeing people's body language. And so in a lot of spaces, I have to make myself visible just because people will just not pay attention to me. And so usually I have, you know, some sort of t-shirt on, something like, you're gonna see who I am, and be unapologetic with it. And so being a Black woman and being a Black queer woman in the academy has been very interesting, just because you kind of have to make your voice heard. And that we can do that, and so don't discount us.
For me, I think it is a very complex question. I think as a woman in a dominated field of white men, criminology, you know, your methodology, the way that you capture data, the way that you ask questions is not acceptable, you know, on so many different levels to individuals. And so it means that you just keep going. But I think as a Muslim, a Black Muslim woman in a field for criminal justice, oftentimes there's a lot of Islamophobia, and individuals who cover their hair are seen to be terrorists. And so oftentimes the dialogue and conversation in rooms of all white chiefs of law enforcement officials is oftentimes very interesting, because it diverges from what we are there for, and goes to what their personal practices or experiences are when they hear my last name of Muhammad. Oftentimes, when individuals get to see me, they're surprised because they think that I'm a Muslim Indian man. So, you know, there are just so many different stereotypes that go into the spelling of one's last name and not being able to identify my gender from my first name. So, you know, once you get past all of those things, it's interesting because I'm a people person. So regardless of what you feel about the religion that I practice or the color of my skin or my age, most of the time the audience is thrown off guard because they actually navigate towards me and connect with me. And so part of the relationship in the identity is weird, because when I show up in all of my confidence, it makes individuals feel unconfident about and weird about their stereotypes, and you could sense it and see it. And so a lot of what I do is help people feel comfortable just being who they are, because I'm unapologetically me. I know who I am. I'm able to see when individuals are playing games. And most of the times when I enter a room, I'm there to accomplish something. And regardless of what somebody feels, I'm securing the bag, right? Like I'm there to secure what I've come for. And I just don't mess around with the wish-washy in terms of what people feel and how uncomfortable they feel about a situation, especially as it relates to being a Black young Muslim scholar.
We have a question from Ebony.
Hello, good afternoon, Howard family. So I'm putting on my mental health hat, and I'm always curious to know, how do you all achieve your personal and professional balance?
I'll take that one first. As of late, not very well, to be honest. This year, I took on 2 roles, both as interim, this and that, and it's been overwhelming, particularly under COVID. But I just function. I was raised to, my grandmother always said, get your work done. Get your work done. No matter what else is going on in life, you get your work done. And that has been able to pull me through. But in terms of mental health, I do meditate. That's priority number 1 for me. I can tell when I haven't meditated because my whole vibe is off. I can feel the stress manifesting itself in my body when I don't meditate daily. So that is the one thing that I do. And then when I'm really stressed, I try to exercise regularly anyway, but when I'm really stressed, I definitely do, because that helps to push the stress out of your body so it's not impacting you physiologically. So those are my practices, but I'm anxious to hear what others are doing.
Yeah, I think I guess there's two versions of my academic self. There's the kind of me before I get married and me after getting married. So I think before I get married, I didn't make real distinctions. I was just like, I'd be up at 2 a.m. doing work because like I didn't have other responsibilities. I think afterwards, the balance, I think I was more balanced after getting married, just because I have another person around. We're sharing responsibilities, kind of have to plan and do things. Yes, I think having a wife, it's not advice I can give to somebody, go get a person, but I think that helped me balance the professional and personal stuff. But I think too, just going to therapy, and not thinking that going to therapy meant there was something wrong. It just meant that I mean, as you know, me going to the barbershop is therapy. Like I think my barber is also my therapist. It's like, oh man, this thing is crazy. And we just talk it out. But I think it's helpful too, especially when the job gets stressful and the person that you usually talk to may not want to hear you complain about the paper or a conference for the millionth time. So yeah, I think those two things have been helpful to me.
I agree with Dr. Hope. Therapy. I in all transparency, I have depression and anxiety. And so I am on medication, but I realized while in grad school, pushing myself, I got to a point where I just couldn't do it anymore. And so you don't want to get to the point where you just break. And I did. And so then, seeking out therapy and all these other things has really helped me. I also meditate, do yoga. But what I realize these jobs don't care about you, right? So I always like carry yourself with the confidence of a mediocre white man, right? So they're doing the bare minimum and they're getting all the praise. So why am I giving a 300% and they're giving 10 and they get everything? And so I think that for me, it's just like, I put myself, and this is something my therapist told me, I put myself to a level, like I give 110%. And when I don't achieve that level, I think I failed people, but I made up that 110. Everyone expects me to do 50, but if I don't do the 110, I think I failed other people. And so especially as Black women and Black people in general, people are going to ask you to be on things. You have to know how to say no. Like, if you say no, the world will keep spinning. Like, that's it. And so I make self-care very much, like I put my phone on do not disturb after 10 o'clock. Like, if other people aren't answering the email, why do I have to? Like, why am I'm too available. I was too available to people. And so I think that, kind of realizing that the institution of higher ed, they are a business. That's what they are. They don't really care about your mental health. They don't care about these things. And so it's just like, well, why am I killing myself? And then I saw a tweet yesterday that was interesting, that with especially academia, that it's not a 9 to 5, so you always can do something, right? There's no like, my boss gave me this project and that's it. I could always be writing a paper. I could always be presenting. I could always do research, and there's no cap, there's no end. So you feel like you're constantly climbing because, if you work in retail or other places, just like after 5, that's it. You don't take it home, but we could always be doing something. And so kind of putting in the mindset of where is that cap for you? Like, you don't have to do it. Like, you're still making an impact with the stuff that you're doing. And so I think that your self-care, self-care is a radical practice, right? Like Audre Lorde talked about, self-care is like political warfare. They don't want us to take care of ourselves. They want us to burn out, but the white people aren't doing the same thing. So why am I doing it? Like, so I kind of have that mindset a lot. And kind of like at weekends, I'm not doing work. And I've worked with Dr. Muhammad multiple times. Dr. Muhammad knows don't give me anything on the weekend because I'm not doing it. Like, it's not happening. Like, the weekends are mine. You got me during the week, but weekends I don't do it, just because I need a sense of balance. And like, and also don't do work in your room, in your bed, if you have the option. Don't do that. I learned that a long time ago. Just because if you do work in your bed, then psychologically when you go in, your mind is still on. So keep your bed for sleep, or, you know, other things. But, you know, because when you go in, then you automatically will calm down. And so if you have the energy and the space of like frantic, got to do stuff, then when you go in that room, then you want to do that and you can't calm down. So very much dividing work and personal and being intentional about it.
I would say for me, I'm a mother of 3 children. I have a 15-month-old, 8-year-old, and 11-year-old. So for me, I have to I have to put in boxes the things that I want to accomplish. And so I really center family. I center family. My research revolves around family. It revolves around love. Being on the tenure track, I made sure that even my first publication was looking at mothering from the field. I wasn't going to be reading anything, busting my butt, doing anything that wasn't going to center family. And so I make sure that no matter what it is I'm working on, no matter what my outfit looks like, that I could get down on my hands and knees and crawl around with the baby. I spend a lot of time holding my son, which brings down like anxiety and just, you know, having a baby so new and close to God. It's like, it reminds me of the important things. I am a nursing mom, so just the makeup of my body of producing milk automatically reduces the stress and builds the hormones for relaxation. So I typically nurse my children for the first 2 years of their life. So it really gives me a nice balance, and, you know, that's on demand and throughout the day. So automatically my body is balanced, and I incorporate in that thinking. I carve out time just to think. I do a lot of thinking, which has just helped balance me in the sense of being able to triangulate. Through that thinking process, I was able to come up with a strategy where I'll look at an email immediately, I'll respond and schedule it to go out at 10 in the morning, or even on a Thursday or Friday. So even if the assignment is done and the due date is Friday, the earliest you'll get it is Thursday or Friday morning. Just because something is done doesn't mean that everybody needs to know, so that you could be overworked. So again, the thinking, I can't, you know, I can't put that out enough, that time to just think is very important. And I do really small things. So if I need to go and get gas and I'm excited about a paper that I was able to submit, I'll blast trap music on the way to the gas station, because I don't have my kids in the car. I can't play curse words with them, but I like to jam, you know, in the front seat, and dance a little. I, you know, burn candles. So my favorite candles, I may burn those starting at the end of my last class. So then the entire house smells like, you know, a spa. Sometimes I will, you know, get some of my kids' favorite books and we'll just sit and I'll lead a lecture with them, right, on like these crazy topics that I teach to adults. But being a professor in my house has helped me to just, you know, find peace and happiness, because one of the things that we beat ourselves up over most of the time is like trying to balance between the home and, you know, the workplace. So I do the things that I do in the workplace, in the house, and engage my daughters in like PowerPoint presentations, which they have fun, but it's a part of their homeschooling. So I make sure that the professor of the year that I could get on campus, I'm getting in my house. And that just makes me feel really good. I'm a foodie. So, you know, at least once a week, we're cooking as a family together. Tuesday for tacos. You know, we may do banana splits, any of those sort of things. I love taking pictures. So we go hiking sometimes and take pictures, just small things. And sometimes when I come back from these things, I may sit down and write something. I may get on the computer and, schedule emails that'll all go out on Monday morning. But I just make sure that I find time to do the things that I really enjoy. And that actually includes research, and it includes teaching in facilities, and it includes all of the things that I do in my daily life. So just balancing those two. And when I get it right, it makes me feel so good. Like it gives me so much energy when I'm able to say 50-50 or even 60-30, just as long as it's equal in 100, at the end.
Thank you all for your candor. We have another question from Todd. Go ahead and unmute and turn your camera on.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being part of this panel today. I think related to Ebony's question, also what Dr. Gatewood mentioned, I was curious whether you had experienced an extra burden of service as faculty of color. That's something that I've heard about, like even in my own experience as an undergrad, oftentimes I would go to the few Black faculty as kind of advisors and mentors. And so I was curious if you experienced that, how you've navigated that, and if you feel like that's different or more distributed at an HBCU versus a predominantly white institution.
Dr. Adams,
No, you go ahead.
For my experience, just because I currently, my postdoc is at a HBCU, but I still adjunct at PWI, so Georgetown and George Washington, and all the Black students want to work with me, right? And I'm like, I'm not even full time. Like, I can't even give you like what you need, right? And so people always want to ask you to be on things, right? And now in the age that we are, they're throwing money at Black people, right? This racial reckoning that's happening. Like, I don't want to be racist. Here's money, Howard. Here's money, Black people. So I think that, as of right now, even me being, a newbie in the game, I'm asked to do a lot of different things and do a lot of service. And, you have to balance that, because that can detract from other areas, because students are exhausting and can be exhausting. And during COVID, I don't know if anyone's had this experience, students are even, they have a lot more issues than previously before COVID. So it's just like, there's always email, someone's always happening. And, you don't want to stretch yourself too thin, because especially don't do anything you're not getting money for. So I think that in general, I know even in my couple years being in the game, like a service is a big thing. And especially at the PWIs, all the students of color want to work with you. And they, when the stuff with Breonna Taylor and all this other stuff was happening, I would have dialogues in my class, and like the Black students would just come to me and just want to like unload, right? And they want to unload with all their frustrations, and even talk about mental health. They don't ask, are you mentally prepared for this? They're like, let me give you all of my stuff. I'm like, oh, this is a lot going on. And trying to balance that, because you want to be like, oh, they need someone to talk to, but also, your experience, what's going on in the real world. You try to carry their burdens. And so it can be a lot. That's why you have to like balance that. But you do get asked, students will come up to you, and it's just like, you rather do something for the students, right? You want them to be okay. So it can be hard saying no to them. I know I've had issues saying no to the students, especially the ones at these PWIs, because I know how hard it is. But you get pulled in a lot of different directions to do a lot of service. And it can detract from teaching, it can detract from research and other things that you might want to do.
I would say, yeah, I mean, no matter where you are, depending on what the word is on the ground in terms of what students are saying you do and don't do, you'll get an influx. For me, I feel like a lot of students and service work is like, students wanting you to be their mama. And I remind them, I got 3 of my own kids. You have a mother and a father, and really, being very candid, from the beginning. I give a lot of students, staff, faculty, whomever wants to work with me assignments, because I have to be able to weed out who's a work and who's not. Like, I'm about my business, I'm about the movement. And so like, sometimes you get individuals that just want to pull that down. I don't think that's a conscious thing all the time, but oftentimes if someone hasn't thought about the things that they're interested in introducing to you, it's going to pull you down because now you're lifting them up and yourself. And so for me, a lot of the times when students want to meet and they want to engage, I ask for, you know, their resume, I ask for a writing sample, and I, you know, really structure my meetings around deliverables. So that's the same even with students' office hours. Typically, you know, they have an opportunity to open it up and talk about the things that they're dealing with. And I always triangulate it back to, you know, we have 20 more minutes. You did mention that you want it. So I'm very professional when it comes to the ways that I engage in those spaces, because I know matriculation is an important thing. And there are services that are outside of, you know, my office hours that students would have a better job at than, you know, just sharing with me. I think when it comes to that extra burden, you have to know exactly what you can deal with. I know when I was at a predominantly white institution, I would often pull my cool colleagues in, right? Because all of the Black students come to me, but they want to know how to code switch. They want to be seen as the cool faculty member. Let's get to work then. If you're really about that life, then, you know, these are 20 students, you could take 10. So I refer students to individual faculty members that I have communication with so that it's kind of a balanced playing field and we're kind of sharing those duties. So, you know, getting to know the faculty and getting to know who you can send something where students would get a response, then that gives me an opportunity to work with 2 other students. When that student comes back, now I'm prepared, they're further along. So really forcing, you know, individuals to be team players and identifying early on who's going to answer an email, who have you built relationships with where you send a text or an email and you know they're going to respond, they're going to be there for you so that you don't drown with this heavy burden. But that also means that when you're called on, you have to do the same thing. And that may mean somebody's asking you something last minute and you have to jump in. So literally using kind of the codes of the street. Like if my homie contacted me and needed something and I had to jump in, I would, and then I would be able to send that too. So really being strategic about the students, the faculty, and the staff that you can lean on in the case of emergency. So I, you know, create that infrastructure and I only use it when it's important. So even when I have individuals like, oh my God, I could just go to this person over and over. It's like, if I'm gonna send you something last minute, you gotta be getting something out of this. It has to be, you know, kind of this bottom line. And I think that has helped me because individuals know if I'm going to reach out, it's going to be really worth it in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And I find that they mirror that too with me. So people are watching, students are watching. And I think the message that you send from the way you engage in this service work is important because on the tenure track, if you think about it, you get the low number of points there. But the high, you know, regard of it is that you're collegiate. Right. So it does show that you're able to work with your team. So you really have to tread lightly and balance that, you know, out a lot because it could hurt you, you know, in the end by saying yes to some of those things.
I would just add to the discussion that you have to have situational awareness too. So it is, I would say at Howard, you know, you have students who, just like, I can't remember if Britany or Bahiyyah said this, that no matter where you are, students are going to be drawn to you if they know you're about something that they want to connect with. So you have to be able to take on the students that you can, and then refer other students out that you can't take on. And in terms of what Bahiyyah mentioned in terms of, what is it called? You just said it. Somebody help me out here. Not your extracurricular activities, but it's your service, right? That's where situational awareness is really important because in some instances, particularly when you're just starting off, you don't want to take on a lot because you need to focus on your research. But at the same time, as you start to go through the tenure process, you want people to know who you are, before the application gets to the dean's office. And so that's where it's important to eventually start to join some committees, start to network, start to really meet people, because it's been at having informal conversations with people where I've had some of my most important connections research-wise, really, for my career, I would say in the last several years. So situational awareness is important. Also knowing how much you can take on and how much you can't, and knowing, as Britany said, it's okay to say no, or not now, or let me think about it.
Yeah, I think what everyone said is good. I think I'll just add one original thing. I think at HBCU, obviously being Black is not going to be the marker for service, but sometimes being competent or having standards will be the marker for service. So you come in and do one thing, it's like, oh, you know how to do this. I had a colleague call me at like 10 o'clock because a PDF I sent for a job candidate was upside down. He's like, I don't know how to switch, like make it right side up. I was like, you can't be calling me about that. I know how to use computers, but like I can't, I'm just not gonna do it right now. So you may show up in a situation, right? So imagine you have a bunch of friends, they want for a party. So the friends go buy, I don't know, some ice and some liquor. And you're looking around, the party's about to start. It's like, all right, you know, we need plates, we need napkins and all this stuff. You recognize nobody's gonna do it. So for me, I ended up taking on a lot of service because I was like, you know, this is not gonna work if we don't do this thing. So I'll say one, if you're gonna be the type of person that's like, I'm just gonna do what needs to be done, you have to not be resentful about it because you volunteered for it. I think two, in my career, so when I showed up, I ended up supervising most of our all of our seniors have to write papers to graduate. They have to write a senior paper. I ended up supervising most of the senior papers. I wasn't getting any real credit for it. They just wanted to work with me. And it was the case I ended up advising a lot of students. So I didn't think about this strategically, but it ended up happening. So now, instead of on the side advising all the seniors, I'm teaching the senior seminar. So that's one of my classes. So it's not an extra thing. And I became director of undergraduate studies and got a course release for it. So if it's the case that you're going to take on extra stuff, or you're going to be the person that's like, I want to get this thing done, or if you had a PWR, so I want to do Black programming, kind of get some credit for it, make it a class, get a course release, so you're not just doing extra stuff.
So I've interviewed Dr. Adams and Dr. Muhammad, and they know I like to ask the question, you know, is there anything that you wish I had asked you? So I'll give you a version of that, which is what other advice comes to mind that you wish someone had shared with you early in your career? So our audience represents faculty before tenure, postdocs, and graduate students from first years all the way up to nth years like me. What advice do you wish you had been given?
I have something. So I was given this advice kind of, but I didn't take it right away. And that is, when you get rejected, because you will get rejected, if you're writing grants or you're writing a book prospectus or you're working on journal articles, as probably most of you already know in the audience, not to take it personal. You cannot take it personal, and to turn it around. So not to take it personal is my piece. What one of my beloved advisors told me was to turn it right around. A lot of times we sit on it. I know early in my career, I cried, I called my mama about it. I talk about it, I was hurt. Don't be hurt. Now, if I get a rejection, here's an example. I worked on a book for 2 years with a publisher. This person asked me to make a change. I made a change. Then she came back and said, oh, actually, you made too many changes and it's not a really good fit for us. I was upset. I mean, I was upset. But at that point in my career, I was like, you know what? Just get a better publisher. And I bitched and moaned about it for 2 days. I gave myself 2 days. Right after that, I got busy finding another publisher. It's hard to find people's telephone numbers. I tracked down folks' phone numbers. I set up meetings. At the next ASA meeting, I took myself to that meeting. basically I got a book contract. It was with a better publisher. And I'm saying all that to say, not that I'm some great person, but I decided at that point to get mad instead of sad. So whatever it takes for you to get over that rejection, use that. Don't stay in the anger, because that's not positive. But learn how to deal with rejection in a way that's going to work to motivate you instead of bringing your spirit down.
And I would say, you probably heard this before, but, work smarter instead of harder. I remember I was doing something in high school, and there was a sorority or fraternity, something that was working with us, and they told everybody run around the block, and everybody in the group went and they ran literally around the block. And I looked down at the concrete and saw the square, the block on the ground, and I literally ran around that block on the concrete. And I remember they just looked at me and was like, at that point, I didn't even have to pledge anymore, right? Like I had thought about something in a way that the outcome caused the people that were wanting me to do it to see me in another light and want me on the other side with them. And so, lose yourself in your data and enjoy it, have fun, with your statistics and your analysis. Take a break when you find something out to just think. When you discover something new in your data, your research, your teaching, take that little nugget and sit under the tree or sit in your backyard with tea and think about it. Expand a little more and figure out what piece you want to share and what piece you want to keep to yourself. Always keep pieces for yourself. Don't give everything that you have to individuals that you open up to the point where now anybody could stab you, anybody could kick you down, anybody can abuse you. If you work smarter as opposed to harder, it means that you may find something out in the data. You give this little nugget for your dissertation, and you hold a bigger nugget for when you get on the tenure track. So you don't have to beg people to, give you funding or to respect your data. You just go dig back into the data you had already collected. And if you think about it, then it allows you to move with emotional intelligence. I just say think. People think that it's innate, that it's something that just is automatic. But in this busy world, many individuals move by default. There are not a lot of thinkers, regardless of the level of education that you have. So practice thinking, practice refraining so that you can think. And think about everything, not to the point where it's like, anal, but, a recollection that you're, kind of thinking about it so that you make sure you put a little bit for yourself. And then you also accomplish, what it is that you need to do. And that way you'll always be able to feed yourself and you won't be dependent on individuals to have to feed you.
Yeah, I think Dr. Muhammad always lays down the truth when she talks. Like, I got to follow up with something interesting. But yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think I would add, I guess, a few things. And it may apply to some and not apply to others. So I think one of my problems was kind of thinking I knew everything. Like, I got a PhD, I wrote this paper, I did the research. And I remember arguing with editors. So two reviewers wrote back and said, this is not good. And I read the review and I was like, y'all both dumb. And I'm gonna tell you why you're dumb. And I wrote to the main editor and he's like, all right, I see your point. I'll send that to somebody else. Sent to the third person writes back. I was like, this person's dumb too. Like, I'm not doing this. And he's like, how nobody else to send it to? Like, you're not wrong exactly, but so I think kind of being flexible and recognizing that there may be other people with insights, and don't say, as you're moving towards tenure, recognize that kind of getting stuff out and getting stuff out, getting your name out and crossing that finish line is sometimes more important than having things be exactly the way you want them to be. So I think that's one thing. I think another thing someone told me I did not follow was think about how to kind of brand and market yourself. Because I think about myself as kind of a, I don't know, I came out of grad school, look, I'm interested in all these things, and I'm just going to write about what I feel like writing about. I didn't think till later. I was like, all right, well, when they think of Brandon Hogan, what are they going to think about? What am I going to be known for? So I think now I'm thinking more about how I present myself in public as an academic versus my kind of private intellectual pursuits. And I think another thing is, no, one thing, this is three things. Kind of present your work in public more. I think I had this tendency to sit in my office and write a paper and think it was great. So I went to conferences every now and then, but I think if I was to do it over, I would go to more conferences and get more feedback before submitting stuff. So you have to worry about reviewing 1 and 2 because you've had 30 people review your stuff.
I think I would have advice depending on where you are. So like as a grad student, your dissertation is not going to be your best work. It's not. And I was told that multiple times. And one thing I was also told is you're not going to save the world with your dissertation, right? I want to do all these things. I want to have all these things. I need to look at this. I need original research. All right, you could do that when you graduate. And also don't argue with your committee. Just do what they want. It's fine. But take those chunks. Don't always keep your scraps. I've been told this multiple times, like always keep your scraps. And they're like, delete these 5 pages. Okay, those 5 pages are gonna be somewhere else. So keep your stuff because they're probably original ideas. But your dissertation is not, it's going to make an impact. But me in a postdoc situation and me being, this emerging scholar, limited people have asked me about what my dissertation's on. They ask you what your research is on. And so, one of my chair always said that, we just want to make sure you know how to do a research study. Like you're just doing a long research study. Like we just want to know you could put all the things you learned into a paper. And so even when and then I looked at other people's dissertations, even at Harvard, they had misspellings. They were all these things like, it's 200 plus pages. Like, and I look at mine now, I'm like, I shriek, like, who let this go by? So like for grad students, you should network, especially go with other grad students because you all are the next cohort of scholars. So you could say, hey, I know this person, I know this person, I know this person. And also, so it's going to help you. So at conferences, go to all of the, if they're in person, go to all of the grad student events, get all the free liquor because they like to give grad students liquor and food. And if you like in sociology, there's ABS and there's like a house party and you'll see people that you have studied twerking to the music, like, what? I studied your stuff. And so you get to know them in these informal situations. So that will be my grad student. As a postdoc, I'll agree with Dr. Hogan because I went to this thing about how to get your research agenda. What do you want people, to come out? What do you want people to know you for, right? And so like, if people say your name, what is it associated with, right? So what is your brand? And so, talk like, as Dr. Hogan was saying, like, what do you want people to know you for? And even the networking and knowing people, I've got most of my opportunities because I knew somebody. Not just off of me just applying. I just knew somebody, right? And they know who you are and they can vouch for you. And that does a lot in academia, that people can vouch for you. And you get to the point where, and this is not to toot my own horn, but next year I'm going to be a visiting professor at George Washington, just off of what students have said off me. She's like, I didn't even see your CV yet. I just heard about you, right? And I was just like, oh, okay, right? And so it's just like your word of mouth and what you put out there is going to make an impact. And also, the academy is changing. You have to have an online presence. That, like, you have to, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, how you do virtual events, things that people see, you're going to have an online presence. It's not just about your publications. And so I have only a few publications, but I keep getting all these opportunities just because people know me or people have seen me or they've seen things online. And so I'm getting another opportunity for something else. And they're just like, we want people that have an online presence that can just teach things very well. And just like, and so, people like Dr. Hogan said, can't even turn a PDF, like, but if you know how to do these simple things, a lot of people don't know how to do them. And so the thing is, like, get your online brand. And also, I'll tell everyone this, buy your name domain. Buy it now. even if you don't have a website. So do your first name, last. I have 3 iterations. I have my first name, last name with my middle name, and I bought them like my 2nd year of grad school. They're like $12 a year, so no one can take them. So every year it renews. I just got a website like 3 months ago, right? But no one can take your name. And so if you want to be a brand, say you have a book in 10 years, you want yourname.com, right? But someone can take that. So buy it now buy it now, keep renewing it, make your website whenever you want to do it. I did 3 iterations of my name, but you could do whatever, but own your name, own your Twitter, Facebook, all that handle. You don't even have to post anything, just own it. So when you get to that point, you can put it out there. And so that is like advice I got a long time ago. And now no one can buy any of my names, and also make sure everything is cohesive. So my Twitter, this is all the same because I got them at the same time and made sure no one else had them. And so that protects your brand later. And also I think Dr. Muhammad was talking about, don't tell everyone what you're doing, because people steal ideas. And as I've noticed they steal a lot of Black people's ideas, right? So, a white person will come to an event, have a Black person speak, and now it's like this innovative idea, right? So, and this happens a lot because like prison and higher education stuff, Dr. Muhammad knows, like the white women will come to stuff and then steal your whole ideas. And so always keep something to yourself. So as Dr. Muhammad said, I fully agree with that. Keep something to yourself. Don't put everything out there. And also you need a community, no matter what stage you're at. You need a community and people at different levels, just so that, and you can have more than one mentor. I have more than one. And so you have to have a community that people are behind you. And since there's not a lot of Black people that get PhDs. So some people just can't relate. And so having a community where people, can relate a little bit can be better, instead of having to like explain everything. It's just like, what the academy is. I don't have to explain it. So like having some sort of community like is really going to be helpful later on.
So we have one last question that popped up from Yesh about how one navigates using their birth name versus their chosen name, and can you use your chosen name for publications? If not the experience of one of the members of our panel, maybe someone else in your circle. Somebody want to take this one?
I would think that you can publish under the name that you're comfortable with. Yeah. And many people write under, alias names. So it's not an alias for you, it's who you are. So I don't think that would be a problem, but, you might want to actually ask a publisher.
And I would say I've seen on individual CVs that I was reviewing a tenure packet, and there was a, maiden name and then the married name, and they used both. And there was just an asterisk on their CV underneath their name that identified, the various kind of names, so that individuals could, have that understanding. And I think they, in looking to confirm it, they look at the publication and the university that you're claiming under, and that also is listed on your CV. So there's ways for them to be able to check fact and make sure that that in fact is you. But I've seen individuals use the name when they were married, switch it back to the regular, name. I've seen a couple of renditions of it, and it's not frowned down upon. They just want to know what is included in your CV.
Right, and I've done that. So I've published under Adams -Fuller, and then I just went back to Adams. It's all me. So.
Thank you all so much. I'm looking at the time and wanting to make sure we respect the gift that you've given us of your presence, and also the time of the members of our audience. I just want to say that this is one of those examples where we have 2 professors, Dr. Adams and Dr. Muhammad, who sent emails to their network and made this happen. And I greatly appreciate it. And I know our audience does also. Thank you so much for your time. I know our attendees are looking forward to spending more time with you, Dr. Adams and Dr. Muhammad, but we hope we see you again. Dr. Hogan and Dr. Gatewood, thank you all so much for your time, for your wisdom, for your example, and we will conclude our session there and send our group off to a 15-minute break, unless they'd like to ask any more questions off the record. Thank you all for watching. For more information on SICSS-Howard Mathematica, visit our website, follow us on social media, and join our email list.